Welcome to Electrified. It's your host, Dylan Loomis. Quick shout out to my newest patron, Jorgen H. Thank you for choosing to support the channel. Quick question. How interested are you guys in the battery supply chain? Reason I ask, I'm considering making an investment in a resource that would give us access to information that nobody else really has. But before I go ahead and do that, I want to make sure that at least a decent amount of you would find that information valuable. So if you wouldn't mind, down in the comments, just say battery supply chain and then yes, no, or maybe. Another quick update, over the past few months I have announced a few projects I've been working on. One of them was supposed to have launched by now, but it's totally out of my hands. Just want everybody to know I still am very excited for some things going on behind the scenes, so just stay tuned and be patient in the weeks ahead. MKBHD uploaded this video with some footage of the Tesla Cybertruck at the Peterson Museum exhibit. Just wanted to highlight, you can see this mode basically to load things like a cyber quad into the back, but looking at the suspension in the front versus the suspension in the back. The main takeaway for me from this video is how massive this prototype is. Personally, I kind of hope they do shrink it at least a little bit from this specific design. As you can see, he's sitting down in front of it and you cannot even see the windshield from this position. But again, keep in mind the truck is lifted on the front. Full video will be linked below. Just wanted to pass this angle along because I can't remember seeing one like this where the clearance was that significant. I'll admit it, the more I see this vehicle, the more my desire to have it grows. A few quick things from GM's Investor Day yesterday. BrightDrop, for the first time, released some revenue expectation numbers. They're expecting that unit to do $1 billion in revenue next year. I really think GM needs to take this business seriously. Tesla is not competing in this space, so it's more of a blue ocean. Not that there aren't other competitors like Rivian. However, there's a ton of potential in this EV commercial business line. BrightDrop is estimating that their EV delivery vans should cost $10,000 less than a comparable ICE vehicle. Sadly, they didn't say, is that per year? Is that over the life of the vehicle? I would guess that's per year. But they already have some orders and letters of intent from some big names in the business. And we still don't have the official data for what will qualify for this Inflation Reduction Act from the Treasury, but we're running out of weeks in this year, so hopefully we get it soon. It's likely, though, that there will be a $30,000 tax credit for commercial EVs in the IRA, which is a massive deal for this business. And I just have to say, plenty of people in the Tesla community have been blasting GM for saying that their EVs won't be profitable until 2025. Let us not forget, it took Tesla 10 years to become profitable, so let's have a little bit of grace and perspective when it comes to expectations for these other companies. GM is doing a lot of the right things. Yesterday we learned they just signed a deal with Vale in Canada for nickel, which yes, is a free trade partner, which should help GM to qualify for the IRA incentives in the future. This latest deal should be enough for 350,000 EVs every year, deliveries expected in the second half of 2026. And I just want to add some context to something that was also said yesterday. They said, that's a growing business for us. I gotta say, it's new business. GM dealers have fixed more than 11,000 Tesla vehicles. The problem is, what do they mean when they say fix? Do tire rotations count as being fixed? We just don't have enough data to know what this statement really means. And finally, something big to watch for the future. GM said they're going to launch a new digital retail platform to help the shopping experience. This should reduce GM's costs by $2,000 per vehicle. That's not an insignificant number. As always though, can they execute? Here we have it. Do not believe everything that you hear about Tesla. And this comment from Eric was from a few months ago, but just want you to know I did not forget. What's going on here is Gordon Johnson is saying that all other automakers include R&D expenses as part of their cost of goods sold, which would actually lower the automotive gross margins. Tesla, however, does not include R&D as part of their cost of goods sold. They put it down below the gross automotive profit margin line. So what's the deal and who's right? And don't forget, on YouTube Mobile, you can now pinch the screen to zoom in. Here's the best way to illustrate this. Here's Tesla's line for research and development. It's highlighted. If you go up above that, you'll see total revenue, and from that, you would subtract the total costs of those revenues to get you to your total gross profit and your GAAP gross margin. Gordon Johnson is basically asserting Tesla's gross margins are only good because their R&D is below the gross profit line, when all other automakers are including this R&D expense up here in the cost of goods sold, which is dragging down their gross margins. You could probably end the debate on this point if you wanted to, but the truth is most non-automotive companies do not include research and development expenses in cost of goods sold. So if you wanted to make the argument that Tesla was more of a tech company than an auto manufacturer, then they shouldn't be including R&D in the cost of goods sold. However, for argument's sake, because yes, right now Tesla derives most of its revenue and profit from the auto manufacturing business, let's go with it. Gordon said Tesla was never industry leading. Every other automaker includes R&D in cost of goods sold. Stopping right there, is this true? No joke, literally the first company I decided to dive into this topic about, I looked up Mercedes financials. So this is their most recent report for Q3. What do we have? Revenue. Here's that cost of sales or cost of goods sold where Gordon is asserting all automakers include R&D expenses. Well, guess what? That is not true, because if you go down below the gross profit line, what do you find? Research and non-capitalized development costs, aka R&D, found below the gross profit line, not included in the cost of goods sold. So very quickly, this claim by Gordon becomes factually inaccurate. Now, in fairness, I was able to find that some auto manufacturers do actually include R&D expenses in the cost of goods sold, but it's because they're amortizing these costs over time, doing a better job actually lining up those R&D costs with the products that they're actually selling. And from Tesla's perspective, let's just think about this logically. Where should they be including these R&D expenses? They're composed of what? FSD, 4680s, Optimus, all of the energy software and the energy products. So should all of that R&D be allocated to Model 3 cost of goods sold? The answer is no. I mean, the whole purpose of cost of goods sold is to have your revenue minus your cost of goods sold to find the margin on that specific product. So including R&D in that cost of goods sold for all of those other things that aren't directly related just doesn't make any sense. Just know at the end of the day, it's all a game, because the automakers that do include R&D in cost of goods sold, basically it'll result in them having smaller gross margins, but it will also increase their net income because their R&D expenses will be lower, because they will have amortized those costs into their cost of goods sold over time, again, trying to allocate it to specific vehicles. So I hope that made some sense. Please let me know if it did. Moving on, Tesla has opened up its insurance program in a new state, Minnesota. I went ahead and added some color to Sawyer's chart for some more nuance. So the light green is where Tesla insurance is available with telematics using third-party underwriting, as far as we can tell, because in some of these states it's hard to figure out, is Tesla doing the underwriting itself or is it still contracting that out to a third party? This makes a huge financial difference, so I'm trying to figure it out as we speak. Yellow is where it's been announced it's coming soon. There's only one state that's blue, it's California, the only state where Tesla insurance is available, but telematics is not, so it does not use the real-time driving behavior due to regulations. And the few states that are dark green is where it's been confirmed that Tesla is actually underwriting the insurance in those states itself. Tesla wanted to cover 80% of the US population by the end of this year, so I'm working on another chart that'll show us what percent of the population is covered in the states where it's available. Stay tuned. From Drive Tesla Canada, we get the new version 1.2 of the Tesla Safety Score. There's a new category, late night driving, that's classified as 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. It'll take the number of seconds you drive during that window, including autopilot, and divide that by the total number of seconds spent driving that day. Tesla is encouraging people to drive less during those hours because it will result in a lower safety score, but the value is capped at 29.3% in the formula. I really personally don't think this is fair. I drive after 10 p.m. all the time, and sure, maybe the visibility is a little bit lower, but usually there are less people on the road, so you could probably argue it's less dangerous, but Tesla has the data, so what am I even saying? And there will also be a new visualization of your trips. So after each trip, it's basically going to tell you what happened and which events caused your score to change during the trip. But for now, it looks like it's just for the most recent trip, and when you start a new trip, it'll kind of wipe that data clean, so just keep that in mind for now. And just rapid fire, hard braking and aggressive turning have been updated to count the number of events rather than the duration of each event. The safety score formula now uses the miles weighted average of the last 30 days safety score while ignoring distance driven on autopilot. You can check which version of the safety score you have in the mobile app scrolling to the bottom of the safety score screen. So far, we only know that this is available in Texas, but I'm sure it'll roll out to other states in the weeks to come. Shifting to VW, it's almost becoming comical, but now they're considering an IPO for PowerCo, its energy unit. They're basically gauging interest in this division. And I'll say IPOs and spinoffs can definitely make sense under the right circumstances, but you don't see Tesla looking to spin off its energy division. From Drive Tesla Canada, there's a new deal for a $5 million, 60,000 square foot showroom for Tesla in Claremont, Orlando in Florida. Should be open by next year. Tesla is still expanding its supercharger network to non-Teslas over in Europe. The latest to be added, Italy. And here's a great visual of the Tesla Supercharger global map. You can deselect everything but superchargers open to non-Teslas and get an idea for how expansive this network over in Europe already is. On that note, Tesla will be offering free supercharging between November 23rd and November 27th for the Thanksgiving holiday, but it's only in select locations at select times before 9 a.m. and after 8 p.m. in these select locations. Link will be below if this is pertinent to you. Last up for today, Charlie Bolello is a great follow on Twitter, but want to show you how data can be misleading sometimes. He said used car prices are now down 14% over the past year, the largest year-over-year decline on record, with data going back to 2009. This was a leading indicator of higher inflation in 2020, and the recent downturn is likely a leading indicator of lower inflation rates to come. I just think there's a lot of people on Twitter that would just look at this and see these lines and say, oh wow, used car prices are now below where they've been for the last decade or so. That is not the case because this is a rolling 12-month percent change. This is showing us it's down, yes, 14% over the last 12 months, but remember, we are coming from historic high prices. This right here is the actual Manheim used vehicle chart. So as you can see, we are still significantly elevated from historical rates going back over 25 years. So yes, Charlie's not trying to be misleading. It is true that finally these used car prices are rolling over. This is a great sign for inflation in the months to come, but I don't want people thinking that right now used car prices are below where they've been historically, because it's not the case. They're still significantly higher. So just stay sharp out there, especially if you're on Twitter right now. Hope you guys have a wonderful and a safe weekend. Please like the video if you did, and a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters.